everybody. Welcome to the Real Bible Study. For those who don't know me, my name is Danielle, and I am the Bible Study Facilitator. This week, our lesson is going to be on Genesis 16 and 17 in its entirety. I am also, before we start, we always started with our open prayer. So let's start. I'm going to read and then you follow behind me. Are we ready?
Yes.
All right. Lord, open our eyes.
Lord, open our eyes.
So we can see something we've never seen before.
So we can see something we've never seen before.
Open our ears.
Open our ears.
So we can hear something we've never heard before.
So we can hear something we never heard before.
And open our hearts.
And open our hearts.
So we can receive something.
Something
We've never received before.
we never received before.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. So does everybody have their Bible?
Yes.
All right. Well, Adonna, listen with your ears.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. I'm ready. Okay. So we're in Genesis 16. Abram's wife, Sarai, had not born any children for him, but she owned an Egyptian slave named Hagar. Sarai said to Abram, "Since the Lord has prevented me from bearing children, go to my slave. Perhaps through her I can build a family." And Abram agreed to what Sarah said. So Abram's wife, Sarah, took Hagar, her Egyptian slave, and gave her to her husband Abram as a wife for him. This happened after Abram had lived in the land of Canaan 10 years. He slept with Hagar and she became pregnant. When she saw that she was pregnant, her mistress became contemptible to her. Then Sarah said to Abram, "You are responsible for my suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and when she saw that she was pregnant, I became contemptible to her. May the Lord judge between me and you." Abram replied to Sarah, "Here, your slave is in your power. Do whatever you want with her." Then Sarah mistreated her so much that she ran away from her. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. He said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" She replied, "I'm running away from my mistress Sarah." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her authority." The angel of the Lord said to her, "I will greatly multiply your offspring, and they will be too many to count." The angel of the Lord said to her, "You have conceived and will have a son. You will name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your cry of affliction. This man will be like a wild donkey. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. He will settle near all his relatives." So she named the Lord who spoke to her, "You are El-Roi," for she said, "In this place have I actually seen the one who sees me." That is why the well is called Beer-lahai-roi. It is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar gave birth to Abram's son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to him. All right. So that is chapter 16. So if I had to put a title to this lesson this week, ladies, I am titling this message A Handmaid's Tale. A Handmaid's Tale. I love the show Handmaid's Tale, and I can't wait till the final season comes on and I see how they tie everything together. Has anyone on here, other than myself, ever seen the show The Handmaid's Tale?
Yes.
Yes. Courtney, anybody else? Seen The Handmaid's Tale? Okay.
No, ma'am.
So Courtney,
Yes.
Miss Courtney and Miss Trina, we're gonna be the Handmaid's Tale's specialists, since we're the only ones on here that watched it. Okay, so if you haven't seen the show, it's based on a book that was written by Margaret Atwood from 1985. It tells a story that follows a second American Civil War where a totalitarian society named Gilead subjects fertile women, handmaids, to childbearing slavery. To further let you understand what a handmaid is and how this ties into the text, let me help you understand a handmaid's life. She is ripped from her previous life by a watch group called the R.E.A.L. She is considered to be fertile, and she is assigned to a household of elite wives and commanders. And her only duty is to carry children for these families who can't have any babies of their own. To me, a handmaid is just another word for a vessel that people use for their pleasure. People tend to use and abuse what they feel like they can control. But just like in The Handmaid's Tale, we find a woman who says, I'm not an empty vessel, and you are not going to use and abuse me any longer, which opens us up to Genesis 16. If you had to guess, who would be the handmaid in this chapter?
Hagar.
Hagar.
Yeah. I was about to say June.
Hagar is the handmaid. All right. So, can somebody describe to me how Hagar, from reading in the text, how Hagar fits the description of a handmaid?
She was Sarai's slave, and Sarai gave her to her husband.
We in Bible study. I'm sorry. I'll send you the link. Okay, there's another she said, what y'all doing? I'm sorry, y'all. Someone, a Bible study goer who's running late. One more time, can somebody describe to me how Hagar fits into the description of a handmaid?
She was Sarai's slave, and Sarai gave her to her husband in order to conceive children for her because she couldn't have them.
Yes. But what was the only thing different from Hagar and the true handmaids in The Handmaid's Tale? Because she was given, whereas the handmaid is chosen.
Mm-hmm.
Like how when women go to a sperm bank and they get to flip through a book, that's similar to how they did the handmaids. They flipped through a book till they picked which one they felt would fit their home. So before I continue, is there any particular verses that stuck out in chapter 16?
I think the whole chapter sticks out personally, but I mean.
Okay, is there any verse that you want to discuss?
Well, I can't really pull out a particular verse because it all ties in together.
Okay. All right. So what I'm saying, the first question that I have for you ladies is, have you ever felt like a handmaid? And if so, how?
I felt like a handmaid before at a previous employer, maybe not in a relationship, but definitely like I feel like I'm slaving at a job and I'm being used and mistreated. Absolutely.
Okay. So in that aspect, you still feel used and abused and still for your body, but just not to birth a baby. Because if you think about it, in essence, you're still birthing something, some type of product for this company, even if it could be bread. If you work at Amazon and you on a shift line and you putting the stuff in a box, you are producing something. So you could feel used and abused because sometimes you feel like you're not being paid enough. So I definitely get that. Anybody else feel like they've ever been a handmaid? Okay. So just like in Handmaid's Tale, Hagar didn't have a choice with being a vessel that would just bear Abram's children. Sarah, just like the wives and the handmaids, wanted a child by any means necessary, and didn't care who she had to use to get it, didn't care how the woman felt, and didn't even see her as a woman. She refers to her as a slave. So if we go back and we look in verse 16, what verse matches that? So we're in chapter 16. What verse matches? We're in Genesis 16 for those that's just joining. What verse matches where Sarah gave, or basically took away Hagar's voice and her choice? I like that. Took away her voice and her choice. I like it. It rhymes. Okay, so we're gonna go to.
Is it the third
Yes.
verse?
Yes. Do you want to read that, Ashley?
So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram had settled in the land of Canaan.
Okay. So some translations say that they didn't have an actual ceremony, right? So she wasn't legally his wife, but just his wife because of the act. So only reason why they were calling her his wife was because they had sex. But if they didn't have sex, then he wouldn't have considered her his wife. So now that we're now moving down to verse 4. So, and to make matters worse, the husbands and handmaids literally have sex with their handmaids while the wife or the wives holds them down, and they call it a ceremony. Abram acted just like the commanders. Once he got the go-ahead from his wife, he went and he laid with Hagar, and she got pregnant. Does anybody want to read that verse? That's verse 4.
I'll read it.
Okay.
So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt.
So why do you think she did that? Why do you think she started treating Sarai? We want to sit there for a minute. Why do you think she started treating her with contempt?
Is there a right answer?
What's your answer?
I mean, because it's kind of like, it could go both ways. Maybe she felt some kind of way that she was given to a slave, but then maybe also she felt like that she was better than her because she was able to produce a child and she wasn't.
She couldn't. I got that she could have felt like she was better. I got that. But when we look at the word contempt, right? When you say it seems like to me from reading that verse, and who else can agree, that she felt some type of animosity towards Sarai because you put me in a situation that I didn't ask to be in. Did anybody else read that from that? Did anybody else get that from that chapter?
Yeah.
I mean, from that verse, to know that she sat here, you put me in this situation. You didn't ask me if I wanted to be a wife. You sure didn't ask me, was I ready to be a mother? And now I'm sitting here and my life is put on hold because of something you did to me. Not that I asked to be in. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that? On that verse? How she started holding contempt towards her? But then check this out. Then look at what Sarah said. Then Sarah said to Abram, you are responsible for my suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and when she saw that she was pregnant, I became contempt to her. May the Lord judge between me and you. What do you think about that? What do you think? How do you think Sarah felt about Hagar being pregnant?
Jealous.
Jealous. Absolutely, Miss Maria. She definitely was jealous. And because here's somebody else has given you something that I couldn't give. And how else did you think she felt? Sarah, even though
probably worthless.
Worthless. Yes. Yes. Definitely worthless.
Because back then, like, you was measured based on if you could produce a child, especially a boy, and she couldn't have anything. So probably worthless.
So I definitely felt like she felt worthless. Anything else you think could have described how Sarah felt?
I think she was hurt. Like
Hurt.
just hurt.
And then do you also think she felt disappointed? Because she knew, I'm sure Abram came home several times and told her that the Lord promised us these children, right? But month after month, she never got pregnant. So when that disappointment, she had to have felt that disappointment every month when she went in thinking, this could just be the month. This might be the month right here. And then when she realizes she's not pregnant, she's disappointed all over again. And can you imagine that the time when it would come when maybe her period was a little bit late in her expectations, or she gets jittery and excited for it to all be let down when it comes? Yeah. So I also feel like she may have been a little bit depressed. What do you think? Because if you think about if you have a desire for a child and all your girlfriends around you having children and you don't have any, and you have that desire to have one, that could lead you to some bit of depression. Anything else stuck out to you about that verse? May the Lord judge between me and you. What do you think she means by that?
It's kind of surprising that she don't even feel like Sarai don't feel like she's to blame
Or
in
she
the
had any part
situation.
in it? Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Do she feel like they both was wrong? Like she was wrong because she couldn't produce a child, but then the other one was wrong because she laid with her husband?
Well, I don't know, because if she was a slave, she may not have had a choice, to lay with her husband. But I don't think Sarah taking any blame for nothing that happened. So it's just like she told him to do it, but that don't mean he had to.
Well, what if she thought? What if she was questioning that she wasn't the one with the problem and it was him?
I was thinking that too.
Thinking the slave wasn't going to get pregnant, and then it just backfired on her.
I was thinking that too. Like, what if she really? Because see, then though, what else does that tell her? The problem me.
Yeah.
See, because when you start thinking, well, it can't possibly be me. It gotta be him. And then he go and he lay with somebody else and she gets pregnant. So then you realize, wow, I am the problem. And that is hurtful too. But what do y'all also think about, may the Lord judge between me and you? If you had to think about that one verse, what does that mean?
Well, she had some nerve because she said, we're going to share in this responsibility of being punished. She didn't want to share that. She didn't want to take that punishment on by herself.
So you think when she said, may the Lord judge between me and you, she didn't just say, may the Lord judge you. I want to look at that.
The Lord determine who's the wrong one.
But I want to look at that me and you, right? What do you think? And when she's talking about, may the Lord judge between me and you, us together, what is she talking about?
I think she said.
What you said? I'm sorry, Miss Maria. What you said?
I'm sorry. They both sinned.
They both sinned. Absolutely, they both sinned.
And I guess she didn't trust him. She didn't trust God's word.
She didn't trust God's word. That's absolutely it. But I also feel like she's saying, may the Lord judge this marriage. Because she said, may the Lord judge between me and you, because that's the only thing they got together. Right? So if we're married and we living in this town, we got these people, and Abram is like the commander, and Sarah is like, what's her name we don't like, Courtney? She like the wife. June. No, June was the handmaid. What's the wife name we don't like? She like her, right? In this household, Sarah is the wife, and this is the husband, and you gave your handmaid to your husband. It has to be. You have to look at this as something that's interfering in this marriage.
Her name is Serena.
Serena Joy. How could I forget that? My God. So it has to be where she's saying, I'm gonna let the Lord judge this marriage. Because that's the only thing that they had between them. They ain't judging no land. They ain't judging their friends. So I really felt like she felt that their marriage was on display for the whole land, or the whole, whatever what you want to call them, their town. I think she felt like that. And so now we sit here in this land. Abram we're an affluent couple, but we don't have no kids. So I tried to fix it. I tried to work on it myself, and it didn't work. So even though I gave you my permission, you still didn't have to do it. You know how sometimes you be like, somebody say, well, oh, what you want for your birthday? Maybe your husband. So I'm gonna just use me as an example. My husband could say, what you want for your birthday? I'm like, oh, don't get me anything. And then when he don't, I'm mad.
Mm-hmm.
But you said not to get me anything, right? But I just said that, but I didn't really mean that. So that's why people say, be careful what you say, because that's what I think. I think she wanted him to say, you know what? I know you want a child, but the Lord has promised us. And we might be old, but we're going to still hold on to this promise. No, I'm not going to go sleep with your slave. I'm going to wait to see what thus saith the Lord. But of course, she didn't do that. But that's going to come out a little bit more further down. Before we move on, anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay. So I said, can you imagine how Hagar felt? Here she was thrown into a situation that she didn't ask to be in, and then being treated bad for fulfilling the role of the story she didn't ask to play. Have you ever had to play a role in a story? And if you did, can you give me some examples? So now here Hagar was a slave, but now she's also a handmaid.
At work.
So I know that's right, Renee. You played a role at work, because sometimes we put our work face on. Then we come home and we have to put our mom face on. And then if you're significant other, you got to put that face on for them as well. So we're all playing, these different roles. You play your role as a friend. You play your role as a sister. You play your role as a cousin. You play your role as this Bible study facilitator. We all have these different roles that we're playing. And so how do that all work together to make us either a better person or a not so good person?
Maybe you need to know when to take that particular hat off.
Yes.
So you need to know when to switch roles.
Yes.
Like how they say, don't bring your home life to work. Don't bring your work life home.
Yes.
So you just need to know when to turn it on and turn it off.
I like it. I like that a lot. And I said, now that Hagar, we've talked about this. Now that Hagar is pregnant, how do you think she walked around the house?
Like a queen.
Like a queen, Johnny. Yeah, like a queen. Like, I'm better than you. I did something you couldn't do. I'm the queen. Or at least I'm the princess. And even probably walking through the town, she probably felt like, you can't touch me. So I said she started looking down on Sarai and began to think that she was better and greater. And I said, why shouldn't she feel like that? I did something you couldn't do. Let's look at that.
But do you really think she felt like that?
Like what?
Like she was better than Sarai? Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm only asking because when we get to that part, it seems like, I don't know, because it's like the way she was handed to her. Yeah. She kind of was like powerless, and then now here she is. She pregnant I don't know. I don't.
But let's sit on that, Ashley.
Okay.
She was powerless until she got pregnant.
But then even after she got pregnant, she was still beaten. She was still mistreated. She was still, abused. So how can she walk around pregnant thinking she's better when yet he told her, this your servant, do with her as you want. And then the wife Sarah still mistreated her, still abused her.
Yeah, but he told Sarah that.
Yeah.
We don't know what he was telling her. Because nothing in here talk about the conversations that he had with her, right? So even in the Handmaid's Tale, the handmaids, once they got pregnant, they got treated differently. They got treated better. Even just for those little 9 months, they got, they got ice cream. They got to eat their favorite foods. They may not have had to do some of the housework. They got to rest more. I'm sure because of her having that attitude and her head stuck high, and like John said, she was walking around like she was the queen, was also contributing into why Sarai treated her the way she did. Because maybe if she sat quietly and humbly, maybe she wouldn't have been treated so bad. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I was wondering if she was ashamed.
Hagar?
Yes.
Or Sarai?
Hagar. Like, because she had been walking around ashamed and Sarai still treated her bad because Sarai was jealous.
I like that too. And because again, she put in a situation she didn't ask to be in.
Yeah.
And so she could have felt ashamed because I'm having a baby for a man that ain't my husband.
Mm-hmm. That I was forced to.
I put that too. I said, and I don't know if you guys want to write this down, but I have wrote, whenever we try to do something without God, it will be a miserable failure or an even more miserable success. Does somebody want to explain it? And we can look at the text for the clues for the explanation.
Say that part again, Danielle.
Sure. Whenever we try to do something without God being in it, without his permission, without his blessing, it will be a miserable failure or an even more miserable success. And we're going to use Abram, Hagar, and Sarah as our example. So
a lot of things are going to be miserable if God is not the focus, not the center. Whether you're successful or not. I mean, if God didn't ordain you to do it, and it's not happening. It may get done, but like you say, you will be miserable.
And even when you think you're successful, it's no success in that. It's no success because the success didn't come in the way that it would have came if God was in it. And what did you have to lose? That's where the miserableness is coming in with this trio. That's what I want y'all to see. The miserableness, it's not a success. Even though a baby is coming, it's not a success because it wasn't the way that the Lord wanted it to be. This wasn't how Abram was supposed to have his kids. And it was a miserable success because of, now may the Lord judge us in our marriage. My wife is depressed. She around here mistreating people. So it's not all fun and games. It's not all, everything isn't as great as it could be. So
yeah, so that's pretty much that, because when we put our hand in stuff and not allowing God to work and have the patience of Job, then yeah, like you said, yeah, the baby was there, but who's in the next chapters, I'm sure, who's to say that he's going to survive? Who's going to say that he's going to go on to be prosperous?
Well, let's continue and see how the Handmaid's Tale unravels. So once we know, we said when she goes to her husband and she says, it's your fault that I feel this way. You didn't went and you didn't lay with this lady, and this lady is walking around here thinking she better than me, and it's your fault because you did this to us. And so now I'm asking the Lord to judge us. And he says to her, here, your slave is in your power, like Ashley said. Do ever what you want with her. Then Sarah mistreated her so much that she ran away. Hagar was like, oh no, this ain't for me. I'm not doing this. So where did she run?
In the wilderness.
She ran in the wilderness. But where did she find herself?
In a desert, by a lake.
By water. And I want us to take reference to that, right? And I want us to just really sit in that just write it down somewhere, because we're going to see this consistently throughout the Bible. Whereas when major things happen to them, a lot of times in the Bible, it's by water. It's by a well. It's by a spring. And we're going to see it as we continue to go through the word and study. We're going to see this. And you know, they said the water represents the spirit in the Bible. So we're definitely going to see how when God interacts with women, and it's been major changes with women, it's by water. So it says who what you say?
Water is a very healing.
Yeah.
I've actually had, like, when my husband passed, went and you can just get mesmerized and wrapped up in it. Yeah.
It's a cleansing element as well. So who did she run to in her travels?
An angel,
but an angel of God, right? So when I was doing my studies, it says the angel of God, and she ran into the angel of God, and this is significant because this is the first time that the angel of God actually appears in human form, and he appeared to reassure this single mother that her and her child would be taken care of. The angel told her to name her son Ishmael, because Ishmael means God will hear. And the Lord has heard your affliction. This was the first time, y'all might want to make note of this too, that someone was named before they were born. So I also put this as a point. God doesn't give a name to anything that he doesn't have a plan for. If y'all want to write that down. God doesn't give a name for anything that he doesn't have a plan for. And then I said, what else does the angel say about her son?
What was that question?
What else does the angel say about her son?
About her son?
Let's look at.
He'll be a wild man, untamed.
So, it says he shall be a wild man. I will multiply your descendants exceedingly. And Ishmael becomes the ancestor of the R.E.A.L people, which is important. And he will learn that he will be standing at war with the Jewish people. And we're going to figure out who the ancestor or the father of the Jewish people. I don't want to give that away now. But Ishmael is the father of the R.E.A.L people, and they're going to be at war. And this is significant. So you might want to write that down because we're coming back to that soon. Not this night, but soon. So I said, what did Hagar name the angel?
A God of seeing?
The God who sees me. Yep, she named him El-Roi, because you're the God who sees. And finally, right, it's good to be seen. So before we switch to chapter 17, is there anything else in chapter 16 that we want to discuss?
I got a question. So, if he was going to be such a, I don't want to say violent, but such a untamed person, do you think it's because the way he was conceived?
Some of the scholars say that's a possibility. When I was doing my research, yes. Some of the scholars say that that is definitely a possibility why he takes the road that he's taken, because of how he was conceived. You know how they always say sometimes how what the baby sits in utero, how the mom feels. It transposes over onto the baby. That's why they say try not to be depressed, don't drink too much caffeine, don't eat too much sugar, try to eat healthy, try to stay healthy so that you can have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. But yes, Ashley, I definitely did see that where they said that there could be a reason why he decided to be wild, because of I guess I don't want to say punishment, but because of how he was conceived. Is there anything else or any other questions before we move on to chapter 17? Okay. All right. So let's move to chapter 17. It says, when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him saying, I am God Almighty. Live in my presence and be blameless. I will set up my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you greatly. Then Abram fell face down, and God spoke with him. As for me, here's my covenant with you. You will become the father of many nations. Your name will no longer be Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I will make you the father of many nations. I will make you extremely fruitful and will make nations and kings come from you. I will confirm my covenant that is between me and you and your future offspring throughout their generations. It is a permanent covenant to be your God and the God of your offspring after you. And to you and your future offspring, I will give the land where you are residing, all the land of Canaan, as a permanent possession, and I will be their God. God also said to Abraham, as for you, you and your offspring after you, throughout their generations, are to keep my covenant. This is my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you, which you are to keep. Every one of your males must be circumcised. You must circumcise the flesh of your foreskin to serve as a sign of the covenant between me and you. Throughout your generations, male born in your household or purchased from any foreigner and not your offspring, whether born in your household or purchased, he must be circumcised. My covenant will be marked in your flesh as a permanent covenant. If any male is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that man will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. God said to Abraham, as for your wife Sarai, do not call her Sarai, for Sarah will be her name. I will bless her indeed. I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she will produce nations. Kings of people will come from her. Abraham fell face down. Then he laughed and said to himself, can a child be born to a 100-year-old man? Can Sarah, a 90-year-old woman, give birth? So Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael were acceptable to you. Highlight that, because that comes back to what Ashley said. But God said, no, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will name him Isaac. I will confirm my covenant with him as a permanent covenant for his future offspring. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will certainly bless him. I will make him fruitful and will multiply him greatly. He will father 12 tribal leaders, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will confirm my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. When he finished talking with him, God withdrew from Abraham. So Abraham took his son Ishmael and those born in his household or purchased, every male among the members of Abraham's household, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin on that very day, just as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when the flesh of his foreskin was circumcised, and his son Ishmael was 13 years old when the flesh of his foreskin was circumcised. On that very day, Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised, and all the men of his household, whether born in his household or purchased from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. Okay. What verses stick out to you?
Well, the verse that sticks out to me is I believe it's 21 when he says his covenant will be confirmed with Isaac. Because I guess he was trying to break a deal for Ishmael. What about Ishmael? And I just was like, he was like, no. I mean, even though he wanted blessing him too, but I guess it goes back to the way he was conceived. Isaac, and it kind of like remind me of Cain and Abel all over again. Like
all over again.
You put
Absolutely.
brothers against each other. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because look at what he said in verse 18, right? If only Ishmael were acceptable to you.
Right.
If only. Like, we wouldn't even be having this conversation if you would just accept Ishmael because he is my son. And he said, no, that's not what I said. I said, you and your wife going to have a son and y'all going to name him Isaac. But see, the thing is right here is what part I get to too. Even though he going to bless Ishmael, he said, but my covenant is going to lie with Isaac. And let's look at that. When Ishmael gets circumcised, he's 13. So that means he's a whole lot older than when Isaac comes. So he's been with his father. Well, we're not even going to talk about that because we ain't get there yet. But he's a lot older than his brother when Isaac comes. Any other verse in here? I said, what did he promise Abraham again?
That he would be what, like fruitful and multiply. He would be blessed.
And he would have everlasting possession of his land. Yeah. So I said, what is the sign of the covenant that Abraham and his descendants must have?
The circumcision thing.
They have to be circumcised. Yes. And this is going to be important as we read. So make sure we keep this in mind, ladies, as we going through the chapters. Some of these things that we're setting the foundations for now is going to transfer over into the future chapters. I said, God then said, your wife will no longer be called Sarai. She should be called Sarah because she is the mother of nations. So I want to say this, and I wonder if anybody else picked up on this. Isn't it funny that God changes their names before he blesses them with the son? Did anybody else pick up on that? And I said, I almost have to say, I have to rename you before you can claim your blessing. As many times as I have heard the story of how Abram name changed to Abraham and Sarah becomes Sarah, it never clicked that they didn't have their son until their name changed.
Is that like a baptism for them?
Baptism? No, I just feel like it was like, I don't know. My thought process is, you know how they say you gotta be like kind of like you said, born again. And I gotta be a new creature, I gotta be a new person, because Abram can't handle Isaac, but Abraham can. And that way, when my name changed, to this new name, the people who might not know Abram, who might know Abram, might not know Abraham. So I can pretend, I can now be and say, I wasn't that person that told my wife to lie to the Pharaoh and say she was my sister and not my wife, because that was Abram, because now I'm Abraham and I'm a new person. As if to say all your old things that you did is gone away and now you are new.
Like a rebirth.
Like a rebirth, Miss Maria. I love it. That's exactly what it's like, a rebirth. You know how sometimes when you be like, well, my name was this, just like what's his name? Kanye West. Look how many times he didn't change his name, even though we still know, who he is. But a lot of people say, you know what? I used to be known as this, but now I'm this.
Like Puffy.
Yeah. P. Diddy, Puffy, what's his name? Mr. Clark. They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they call me Batman. Mr. Clark often lean on me.
And Prince changed his to a symbol.
Yeah, Prince changed his name, and he went all by a whole symbol. Used to be Taylor Swift, now I'm Taylor. Maybe just rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. And I'm finally glad that we got their names of Abraham, because I kind of was always calling him Abraham and calling her Sarah. So now I don't got to try to make sure I keep it straight. That her name is now, thank God, she's Sarah and no longer Sarai. But do you think that even though their names have changed, they still got a little bit of that old them in them?
Absolutely. Because I feel like, I've read this a lot, but I feel like Ishmael and Hagar, they kind of was dealt like the short end of the stick. Like,
Absolutely.
I really feel like they were both like mistreated.
Like they was the slave kid.
Yeah. Like it didn't get any easier for them, especially when Isaac was born. It made it worse. And just imagine, like, Ishmael didn't ask to be born.
He did.
So it was kind of like, it was sad.
It will be sad. And it kind of reminds you today of children that are born into situations that they didn't ask to come in and how they are mistreated. So before, I always want to tie us together. So before, because our hour is almost up. So hold on, let me make sure I got it queued up.
And is 8 the number of completion?
8 is new beginning. 7 is the number of completion.
So isn't that interesting that H, he added an H to both of their names, and H is the 8th letter of the alphabet?
Look at that. Look at you. Let me write that down. All right. So 8, and it's the 8th number. I like that, Courtney. Thank you, sister. 8 is the 8th number. Okay. Of the alphabet. Okay. Go ahead now.
And you said 8 is the sign of new beginnings?
New beginnings.
Okay.
I know.
I learned something new. Thank you, Courtney.
You're welcome.
All right, y'all. Let me pull this up. Include the sound. Let me do this. No, I want this. All right.
Now, you are a legend in the literary world, of course, the author of the best-selling book, The Handmaid's Tale. And it tells of a near-future patriarchal society called Gilead, in which the rights of women have been virtually erased. The handmaids are women forced to give birth to the babies of the ruling class. And you released it in 1985. And I read that the events in the book came from actual real-life events.
Everything.
Everything?
Everything. Well, I didn't want people saying, you're certainly a twisted, weird person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead I wanted to be able to say, I made nothing up. I just relocated it to Cambridge, Massachusetts, where they were not pleased at first.
Well, but where were women being forced to have children?
Which century would you like to...
Yeah.
Which century would you like to visit? Which country would you like to visit? Which state in the United States would you now like to visit?
Which was it in the United States? When was it in the United States?
Well, any time before Roe versus Wade.
Oh, I see.
So, and now, since they're rolling back those rights and diminishing them so much, you're approaching a state in which women are essentially being conscripted or drafted the way you would be conscripted or drafted into the army. And my view on that is, if you want to do this, if you want the state to claim ownership of women's bodies, you should pay. So if somebody is drafted into the army, they get their food, their lodging, their clothing, their medical, all of that covered. So if you want to do that to women, you should pay for it. Don't you agree?
Something's got to be done. Some remuneration if you're forced to give birth to some child that you don't.
Well, I would say a lot of remuneration.
Well, some people say they should pay women for just the housework that we all do, with raising children, cleaning the house, everything else we do. We don't get paid a dime for that.
Well, I think it's a little bit different when it's your entire body that's being taken over.
Well, recently in this country and in other places around the world, we've seen attempts to severely limit people's rights, as you've just mentioned. In your view, do you think we're moving towards Gilead?
Some places are, and some places are moving in the other direction. For instance, Ireland just took a step away from it. So you have countries where women have never had those rights. You have other countries where they've had them and they're being taken away. And what you can say about every totalitarian government, whatever their reason of being they say they have, whatever their ideology, one thing they always do is roll back women's rights.
Right.
Every single one of them. So it is a symptom and also a result of going further towards an autocratic, authoritarian, totalitarian government.
Okay. What y'all think about that? Was it a lot of truth in what she was saying? Even if you've never seen The Handmaid's Tale, her summary of that was everything, because she really had it together. Some states do, it seems like they are taking away women's rights and their voices. And then some states are not. And then it's some countries, and like she said, which century do you want to visit? And it was kind of hard to believe that we live in this free country and somebody might have ever thought that women's rights have been taken away. And that's why it was so good for us to really have this discussion this week, especially with Hagar, because her rights, she had none. And she was their version of a handmaid, of The Handmaid's Tale. And it was very compelling. When I first read it, I was like, oh my gosh, she was a handmaid. So before we end, I like to ask, what did we learn? Well,
I learned.
Go ahead, Miss Maria.
I'm sorry, Daniel.
Go ahead. Tell me what you learned.
That's what I learned. God's timing is always right.
Yes,
Amen to
ma'am.
that.
I like that. Anybody else learned anything?
Yeah, I learned that God changed your name before he gave you the new blessing, your new beginning. Your name changed.
I like
basically.
I like that. That's what I learned too, Renee. Anybody else? That's deep.
I learned very deep, twisted stuff going on in this Bible.
Yes. Yes. And isn't that crazy? We still live in that stuff, the same stuff today.
No,
though.
like it's literally granted, they're raised in church and knowing the basics, but never going into detail and depth of breaking it apart is really having my mouth sitting wide open. Like, what in all the world is going on here?
Yeah.
It's really, it's kind of have me a little shook.
You shook?
Yeah. Yeah.
We waking up. We waking up.
Yeah,
so now that we shook and we awoke, ladies, we got to spread our knowledge to other people so that they can be woke too. And it's not like we're not learning something that it's not, true, because we're reading it. Well, true for us that believe. But it's a lot of this stuff that's happening that happened in this Bible is happening still today. And what they say, we keep repeating the same thing over and over again if we don't learn the lesson.
Right.
I
Anybody?
learned,
What you
I
learned, Ashley?
learned, like, to please one is to disappoint another.
My
Pretty
God.
much.
My God.
Like,
My
it's
God.
just,
Write that down.
That is so true, Ashley.
I like that, Ashley.
You cannot, everybody will never be happy.
To please one. And what that was an excellent one. So are you saying to please Hagar, he had to disappoint his wife?
Or vice versa, to please his wife, he had to disappoint Hagar. Like it's like a double-ended sword. Like somebody gonna get cut. No, you can't. It's like no one wins in this situation.
I like that. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our version of The Handmaid's Tale. And if you have not read it, if you have not watched the show, it comes on Hulu. It's excellent. I love it. And it really shows people how they really think about women. And we have to keep our voices heard so that we don't turn into handmaids. Any final thoughts before we leave?
I could go on all night, but I'm gonna let people go ahead and, it's getting late.
Okay. Well, good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night.